Good evening, everybody. It's right after All Hallows Eve, and we kind of missed the window for a Halloween special, so we're going to do something a little bit different. And when I say a little bit different, I mean a lot bit different.
It
Awoo.
is related to the idea of being something you're not, or rather, something close to what you're not.
Yeah, our topic this week is anthropomorphization. I don't even know how to start this one.
Yeah, really, really broad, and I won't put the pressure on you for various reasons.
Yeah, no, it's quite alright, but anthropomorphism or anthropomorphization, I mean, essentially it comes from, excuse me with that, from the Greek, same root that we get anthropology from, which is sort of, anthropomorphization is the making human of something that is not, in the most general terms. And I think we see a lot of examples of it, but it's a very interesting literary technique that we would like to talk about, and I think it's one that deserves some mention.
Hmm. We do mention it occasionally,
We,
like on and off.
we do.
Hmm. It's,
So you actually have some notes ready about sort of the history of it as a literary device.
yeah, like I said, like I kind of, well, I didn't think I said, but I actually suggested this topic.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I do really do a lot of research, like usual, but I do know that anthro seemed to start in paganism, or what Wikipedia gave as anthropotheism across the
Yes.
world, and seemingly every continent of the world, interestingly enough. Like you
Mm-hmm.
actually see it in cave paintings, interestingly enough, in like France and ancient Europe.
Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting thing is that you mentioned is kind of like there is sort of that universal animal deity idea,
Hmm.
which I think is very interesting. It's sort of the association between something that we see as lower than us being higher than us.
Or you're equal. Well, I would think probably like more like over us in most contexts.
Well, also that's something I think you see disappear when we become more disconnected from nature. Is the lack
By the
of
way,
a nature deity.
yeah, you also see that a lot in Native American stuff because they never really got above a level. They'd have pack animals or stuff like that, so they kind of stayed with that. Kind of funny. You don't see that in Amish communities, interestingly enough, but we won't bother about that.
I mean, if there are any Amish people out there who worship animal deities, feel free to set us straight. But
Send us a letter because we
send
can't do anything much else.
us a letter if you happen to hear this on the wind-up phonograph.
I
Do
mean, we're in Pennsylvania, and anything can happen when it comes to that.
you just wake up tomorrow? There's just a pitchfork stuck in your door with a note written on it. Uh, so continuing sort of along the history of anthropomorphism.
Oh yeah, I saw as kind of Jungian actually, of like having the fact that it's like kind of everywhere. I mean,
Mm.
like there's also animals everywhere, so maybe it's a little bit of an on point. I don't know.
Mm. It's interesting because you think about it. If there's a place where there's a scarcity of animals, what does one worship when there's a scarcity of animals? If one is forming one's own gods.
Yeah, that's a good point. I can't think of really a situation where that's relevant. Maybe with yeah, even like the New Zealanders, they had fish.
Yeah. The only place it could possibly be relevant would maybe be the Antarctic, but even then, there aren't a native people of the Antarctic.
No, Falklands, Falkland Islands, and
Falkland
the,
Islands.
the Falkland Peninsula, but I don't think they settled there in the northern tip.
Even then, you're close enough to the mainland to at least probably have an
Yeah,
idea of what other kinds of animals are.
yeah.
Don't sheep live in the Falklands?
Well, I'm not the Falkland Islands. I'm not sure.
All right, hey, Amish guy, if you're on Amish Google, find out if sheep live in the Falkland Islands, and
Yeah.
then include that to the note that you're gonna pitchfork to Matt's door tomorrow.
I live in a dorm building, so that'd be kind of difficult to get the first two layers of security. But somehow they might make it.
Amish are crafty folk, Matthew. Crafty folk indeed. Smuggle in little bits of the pitchfork over several days in little jars of jelly.
Oh.
This is getting way off topic. But it is sort of a concept that I think that has taken root in non-pagan societies as well.
Yeah, I think like with pagan societies, like maybe it was like kind of a god of gaps thing. Like they saw like attributed human emotion and desire and intention for like thunder is anger or stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it just can't be something that like even its causes like go back into nothingness, which is kind of a secular like people like J.G. Keeley say that's the reason why monotheism kind of became a thing because you just attribute to one cause or one personified being. But
I mean, in a way, I think that is correct because, and if you're thinking about it, it's not.
But a more interesting thing is that those religions such as monotheism always said that was the case instead of having to catch up with the rest of the world when they
true
discovered it wasn't Zeus making the lightning.
Right, like lightning happen. It's sort of like saying it's the difference between saying lightning happens and there is a god versus lightning happens therefore there's a god of lightning.
Yeah, and that's why I think there's a lot of to go a little bit rabbit trail. There's kind of an attack on like the uniqueness of and pureness of monotheism in the ancient Middle Eastern context with Judaism because they just like there's a lot of myths going around the internet that only are alive because of the internet. That like Jehovah or Yahweh used to be like ancient pagan god married to Ashtaroth, but then you looked up as like nonsense. There always was a concept of radical monotheism that was only anthropomorphized to explain concepts, really.
Yes, no, that is
Really
somebody
who
is.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Right? You were in archaeology.
yes, I was in an archaeology program for a year, and we did very aggressive study of the ancient Near East. And yes, there always has been an idea of a radical, singular, a monotheistic deity that is not universally present. This is an idea that you can actually track. You can track archaeology from somewhere in Mesopotamia down into Chaldea, theoretically, and then across into Egypt and back into the Holy Land. There is this. There is an observable progression of sort of this. So, yeah, I know, and I think that is the interesting thing is that we do have. Even monotheism does present anthropomorphic. I think the least anthropomorphic of the, if you will, Abrahamic religions is probably, I'd say, it's probably Islam. I would
Islam,
say
yeah.
is by
But
far the least anthropomorphic of the three
But I will say
Abrahamic.
this, though. I don't feel like anthropomorphism, when it's applied to theism, is kind of nonsensical because, like,
It's the only way it can possibly work.
because the deity can't express itself.
If it has no relationship, because
Yeah.
it would be something entirely other, and if you merely marked it down as saying, well, it can't be anthropomorphic at all, it has no way of relating to its creation.
Yeah, and then that makes like people like J.G. Keeley like argue who want that only a non-anthropomorphic God would exist, and like how would you satisfy something like that, assuming it's falsifiable? Like you have like a Necronomicon that like made you go insane when you read it because you're literally reading like the level of God's thoughts after him. I mean,
or you could just go full Shinto and say God is everything and everything is God and all things are in one, which is basically sort of Shinto Buddhism, are become very indistinguishable at points, even though they are separate religions.
But I don't think you escape from anthropomorphism because you're saying all intelligences are God,
All
including
intelligence.
humans.
You're even including non-intelligences.
Yeah, but you're still including intelligences, so I just say it's still a form of anthropomorphism.
Wait, no, it is because you're loaning motives to non-intelligent things.
That too.
That was deep.
Yeah.
Um,
So I think what we're getting here is that anthropomorphism is kind of inevitable in order to understand things, and it is good.
yes, I agree. I think it is good in as much as as a literary as an idea. I don't even want to say it's a trick because it's not really a trick because it's not dishonest.
Hmm. We do it all the time. I mean, we yell at cats despite the fact that they can't have the ability to hear us, and we yell at cars when they don't work. At the fact that they are starting to understand us, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
A dumb car.
yeah, no, we attribute things to car. Like if you talk nice to your car,
Too.
it will right. It's why do you think we address ships as her?
Yeah, exactly. But lonely sailors. That's my theory.
I forget somebody said there's like it's like the gender of the Latin noun, but I studied Latin and I remember boat being a masculine. I may be wrong, but I remember boat being like having a masculine declension, but I may be wrong. Don't pons pontus.
Like pontoon.
Yeah, same idea. Pons pontus.
I'm not quite sure myself, but yeah, that's interesting. I never considered that. Yeah.
But but then why do we do the same thing with cars? Is it just because we do it with boats, but we associate cars so much more with masculine things.
Well, I think because men actually tend to deal, and still do, even with a more liberalized workforce of men start to work with things rather than people, and having worked a big stint in the car business, that it's just hilarious to see like grown men like go off and threaten cars to have them work for them. Like any amount of cursing out a truck will actually make it stop being an MF and to start working on you after.
You are very, it's true because we treat our things like people, and that is in which ways we can help understand them. So we have to attribute motivations to our things. Like, our printer isn't working right now. So we attribute the fact that the printer, we don't say the printer isn't working, we say that the printer won't work. As if the printer has a choice.
Has a grudge against you.
Yes, as if the printer has a choice about whether or not the printer deigned this morning it would not work. And just said, no, I will freeload on top of your file cabinet.
If you think about it, it's kind of a survival mechanism. Again, I don't think it disproves theism.
No, it doesn't. I actually think it might help prove the idea of there being a theism, because there would be utterly no reason to anthropomorphize other things.
It's also to look for intention in the world, that you can find, clues. You can find something that just doesn't point to anything except for a miracle, or some sort of power outside of time and space, whether it be angel, ghost, or deity. Really, it's like this. It's kind of what my movie is about, honestly. Just too many coincidences.
Yes, which let's hang on to that for 1 second, because I'm thinking about because you're saying you could use it to go back and prove that we're just searching for intention. Because I know people have said the only reason we see God is because we search for intention, but that doesn't explain why we would search for intention. People say it's a survival mechanism.
But it also goes back to the fact that there are legitimate patterns in the universe, and whether it's of course just different arguments of how matter organizes itself. Is it information or is it matter? But the fact it's organized, and that kind of goes back to it, and then it has to be an organizer. Really,
it's like looking at a statistical analysis of Mike Trout and then saying that proves that there's no Major League Baseball.
Yeah, I mean there is supposed randomness, but sometimes it's just bad baseball players. I think that's more of a proof of a cosmic joke, though. like Internet Explorer, maybe in my world, my
Internet
context.
Internet Explorer, my word. Internet Explorer. Internet Explorer. Truly the cosmic joke. We have to use Internet Explorer at work.
Really? Why?
We don't have a choice.
Oh.
I don't know. We just don't. At least Bing has pretty pictures in the background. So, to carry on with that concept, so that's kind of the philosophical concept of it. So what of the literary technique of anthropomorphization?
Well, like I said, a big one that seemed to stick around, and I think going back to our previous subject, because that, like, paganism is kind of, at least classical paganism, is kind of out of the way, and a lot of people believe in science. It's kind of shifted to Western anthropomorphism, which Western in the general, but animal anthropomorphism, and I think it got popular. This is me being a bit cynical because of Disney, and that's why we associate with children. I think we're kind of shocked when we read stuff like Robert Crumb's works and stuff, which also kind of subverted, gave it an adult thing. Like Fritz the Cat, the movie Fritz the Cat.
I'm aware of it. Yes.
Yeah, that came out around the time. He didn't do it with Robert Crumb, but like it kind of like why people were shocked because it's like Disney only makes anthropomorphic animals equals kids, and that's what Ralph Bakshi was trying to subvert. That's why I think, but outside of shock and stuff like that, do you think that there's a tradition of anthropomorphism outside of children's literature, right? And it had,
going back to ancient Greece and beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know it's a very ancient...
For animals specifically, I mean.
Yeah, specifically for animals especially. I think it is something that we do associate mostly with children now, and I think that Disney is a part of that. I think also the fact that so many of like fables featured that, and even though they may be useful for adults, what are fables for? Fables are for passing information to children from adults. I mean,
seems to be like, also not to interrupt you too much, but like there seems to be like sort of a tradition of taking a child to the zoo for the first time.
Yes, that is
in developed countries.
Yeah, I know. What's up with that? Is it like we're not the British Empire anymore? We can't take people on safari. Here's my boy, the Cape Buffalo out there.
I never thought of that. Maybe it is that,
True, but then again, how do you get over the idea? There's sort of the necessary idea of the coming of age as being a hunting event for a boy.
We really haven't for most places, but we just deconstructed much more, and as you know, that's been a
failure. Yes. Hunting, one of those things that I would never want to do, but I'm absolutely in favor of other people doing. You there, sit in the cold. Have fun. Do this the right way while I eat my chicken nuggets.
Kind of what they do in the South, just because it's just better weather, they can do it more year round without like having to like literally go in my uncle and aunt freezing weather, like below zero.
Still, it's very popular in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, we have the most hunters per state.
We also have do we have the most deer, or is that Virginia?
We have the most deer accidents, and we sometimes compete with Connecticut.
Connecticut? Of all, there's not enough people in Connecticut. No.
I guess it's just New Yorkers trying to go like, I don't know, out of
90 miles an hour up to throw bottles at a Boston Red Sox game. So on this idea, we sort of had this cultural thing about anthropomorphic animals. We see them being childish. So then, when something more adult is made regarding them, we as a culture tend to turn against it and find it repulsive.
Yeah, I mean, like general adult interest, which, by the way, I would say that actually, again, existed before this, because I was literally, this kind of came up on my YouTube feed randomly, but there's literally this like first millennium letter between Christian monks who were talking about dog-headed men, which was completely a joke.
Right.
Have you heard? You heard of this, right?
Oh yeah, no, I'm aware of it. The voyage of Saint Brendan included mentions of dog-headed men. There were allegedly dog-headed men in India, whom were met by Saint Thomas. So yeah, no, the dog-headed men have been they've long been an item. They've long been an item. It makes me feel like I'm insulting all dog-headed people everywhere. If you're listening, please write in. Get your mail to our new Amish guy. We should just hire him as our new secretary.
Oh gosh, yeah.
But yeah, no, that's definitely a thing that we've had. We had even look at the Egyptian deities. The Egyptian deities were heavily anthropomorphic.
Yeah.
Particularly Anubis and Bast.
Oh yeah, they were dogs, right?
Anubis is a jackal. Bast is a cat. And Horus.
Oh, like Bubastes. Yeah, that's what
yeah. Bubastes was her holy city.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's very interesting. Actually, I just wrote a short story based on Bast.
You seem to be writing a lot of those now. How
I
many
have.
you
Graduate school, I've written 3. I've written 1 that was terrible and 2 that are pretty good.
Was the terrible one the one with the wizard and the tower and the white?
That was like an entry exam. That was like you need to take it's like take one old story and write one new story for your entrance into graduate school.
So you've actually technically written 4.
I have written 4. Let me put it this way, the first 2 were bad. The second 2 were pretty good.
See, I could never do that. When I was a film major, like was forced myself to write screenplays, and I was terrible, and that's why one of the reasons I stopped. Now I have barely any time to write anything, but at least I write what I want when I want it. I'm still trying to do the daily method, which I probably won't accomplish today, but you know.
No, that's hey, look, it happens to everybody. Just try to keep it a habit. Keep it at the forefront.
There we go.
Yeah, there's some more writing advice for you people out there. Yeah, no. Writing advice. Hopefully I'll be able to give some more writing advice soon. But
so I think what we're getting at is, like, you seem to write a lot about animal anthropomorphism.
Yes.
Your stories. So just what is it that attracts you to anthropomorphic animals in the first place? What makes you so interested?
What makes me so interested is that I think animals give you a lot more to play with than humans.
Oh, I definitely agree with that.
They give you a lot more mindsets to explore, and they give you a much more interesting physicality to make use of. They also give you a more useful frame. They give you a more flexible frame for framing human issues, because some human issues come out most clearly when expressed in non-human characters. And I know that this is part of what your book is about, but a lot of it is.
It's a movie, but that's fine.
I said book, didn't I? I meant movie.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sorry. But I think they do help bring out sort of questions that generally come down to, kind, if you will. I think this is why Zootopia works so well. Because it takes a racial issue but removes it from race itself.
That way you don't have baggage. I guess what you're saying is, like, it removes human baggage?
It does remove human baggage. It is another great thing. It removes human baggage from human issues, which is good. I think that's a very interesting thing that you can deal with. In some works, I think some works handle it better than others. I think some people... the question is really, why are you anthropomorphizing something? Are you doing it to elucidate more about the thing itself, more about the concept? Do you just want it? Which is...
It has to have a use, in my opinion. But yeah, you can just use it for no reason.
And you can use it. I mean, it's not... That's one of those things where it's not wrong to just use it. It's like French fries. It's never wrong to get French fries with something.
I see what you mean, yeah. I think I see what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, but it's always like, yeah, but do you really want French fries with chicken marsala? But it's never like... Masala. Yeah. That might not be terrible.
Yeah. They serve that at a place near my college, but that's another story.
Yes. Ooh, Indian food. So,
I think what you're getting at is like I think that like with something alien,
mhm.
like this goes back to also aliens, like in maybe that aren't really alien looking, like Star Trek or Star Wars, like the
Right.
Chewbacca or Spock, is
Mhm.
that they kind of like have like at some point they have some sort of like core that's like us, and that's
Yes.
the part that we kind of focused on.
Yeah.
Sort of like I would love to play with that like one time and
Right. That's super interesting too, because
yeah.
if you continue from that idea, that's one thing about anthropomorphism. Because as much as like as much as to an extent, you can never truly have a human writer express an alien morality. I think the person who maybe tried the most was arguably, I'd say, Lovecraft. Tried the
Yeah, I would
hardest
say that
to
too.
express a truly alien morality.
But he was like kind of like a physicalist and arguably a nihilist.
Oh no, uh, I would say, is he a nihilist?
Well, debatable, but
Well, debatable because there's the idea of gods, but ultimately the god at the center of the universe is a blind idiot.
he was actually kind of the main villain in my movie. Sort of,
Azathoth?
kind of. A Boltzmann brain who's called Azathoth. It's kind of complicated.
Oh,
I'm kind of spoiling it a bit.
this is getting even weirder.
But you
But
had to know what a Boltzmann brain is, so I didn't technically spoil it at all.
yeah, so like, that's a good question. Is Lovecraft a nihilist? Let's see. I would agree that he's probably a physicalist. Racist nihilists.
Well,
But actually, that's kind of a theme among like racial hierarchy. Or like people who super stress racial hierarchy is ultimately really nihilism. Because there's no greater purpose to humanity beyond its stratification.
except for strength,
Except theoretically for strength, but even still, strength is merely only a physical concept in that idea, which is wrapped up in the mythos of a single race.
I mean, he definitely took like more of a evolutionary stance of like one being closer to apes,
One being
depending on their race.
right, which is a wholly messed up idea.
I don't know if it's necessarily factual, but at least he might have believed it, and it might have been pointing to that more during his life.
I think that is something that people thought, as scary as that was. People really did think that. Even up to pretty recently, especially even like we even see up into the even the mid 1900s with like eugenics and things that have seen a recent rise in popularity again is the idea of eugenics, which is terrifying because that's all part of racial engineering and that's like crazy Nazi science stuff. Like
Honestly, I don't know
it's
how that works
scary.
because I don't see what so highly evolved about getting a sunburn at the beach.
Well, well, people who believe that white people are inherently superior respond to that. How is it more superior to get a sunburn?
We just disprove racism.
We just beat racism. Oh my gosh. Boy, think about it. Even then, if you're looking at like straight up, like even like the idea see, there's the thing. And is that why red-haired people are slowly going extinct?
Yeah, maybe really.
Sorry, Ginger Matt. Little bit Ginger Matt.
Yeah, my beard
He
is.
used to be more ginger. um, well, no, and also I was just thinking about because anthropomorphism wouldn't work in a purely evolutionary world. Anthropomorphism in animals because they'd all have to be. Well, they all have to be predators, or there would have to be a predatory prey balance. But how would you ensure predatory prey balance?
You wouldn't. You just had to pretend, like, have a controlled system and pretend it would all work instead of letting nature do its thing.
Zootopia. So what you're saying is we needed Zootopia for the whole thing to work.
Yeah.
Except,
You had to have meat eating again.
okay, so
Yeah.
You heard it here first, folks. Oh my goodness.
But I think another go just to end our discussion on general topics. I think it's interesting how like some people. I'm not saying this is necessarily the right way to doing things. It seems to almost make people. I won't say immature, but like kind of cling on to things. But how some people, in order to deal with trauma, kind of identify themselves with like an anthropomorphized thing, and sometimes I guess I ought to say it like have a fursona for something, or just like I've heard another guy who like he claimed to see a werewolf and he did like a puppet out of it. But like I think it's funny how like people would like deal with like make themselves an alternate identity that isn't human to deal with trauma. I just think that that's an interesting concept in itself.
Which is interesting because the question is the idea, is it the return? Is the desire for a childlike safeness? Is it the desire to return to something that we associate positively with childhood, which would arguably be a big fluffy animal? That's something that we'd associate with childhood. Something that I definitely associate with childhood. Or is it the desire to simply be someone else, and it's the most aesthetically pleasing thing?
Well, I think there's also like kind of a reaction, and this goes back to childhood, something that's like purely like a simulation or a simulacra of like something that's like you can tell it's like the visage of like of a face, but you can tell it's fake, situated in an entirely fake world, because like maybe because it's controllable, and that's why you see a lot of young men escape into video games because they can literally control their world.
It's control because
it could be a desire for control. Because like what's that French quote at the beginning of Fear and Loathing Las Vegas? He who decides to. I can actually look it up real quick.
Yeah, like I know what you're getting at. Like this is worth talking about.
Just find this literally in 1 second. He who.
Yeah, no. So like it is worth talking about because oftentimes we tend to associate anthropomorphism with trauma. Is that also a Disney thing? Because
it's possible. Then it's only been possible for like baby boomers and before then.
Right. Like
which
the
is kind of
fox and the
interesting.
hound.
It's kind of like it's kind of consumerist, but it kind of gave us a language of dealing with stuff like that. Kind of postmodern too, because it's like it assumes people. Well, actually, it doesn't necessarily assume people understand. It is if it's set in a fictional world. The idea of an OC, like a gemstone for Steven Universe or something. But if it's just a general animal, it's actually kind of furries are kind of un-postmodern because it's just so general. It doesn't have to be a franchise. It can just be your own original creation.
It's a community. That's the thing. It's an organic existing community. It didn't spring up around a single thing. It was people who came together over an idea. It's not a fandom because it's not built around a single thing, and you're not competing for. It's not necessarily competing amongst itself for anything. So it's not like a sports league. It's not like baseball.
Yeah, that's funny. I think that's why people like that aren't attracted to sports because it's just so accepting. It's like to the point it's dysfunctional, which is what you get a lot in media portrayals of stuff like that. But as much as I don't think it's about trauma, I think it is ultimately about escapism. Because I found the quote, by the way, person called Samuel Johnson, that he who makes a beast of himself gets rid of the pain of being a man. It is more from carelessness about truth than from intentional lying that there is so much falsehood in the world.
Huh.
So it's an intentional lie, not a falsehood.
Well, no, it's not a falsehood. It's no more a lie than writing fiction is a lie. It's an intentional suspension of reality for the sake of something bigger.
Yeah.
So the sake of something better, is it escapism, or is it the desire to come closer to other people in a fully controlled environment, where you can stop being something at a moment's change?
I think that's also funny because, like, I think a little bit of a rabbit trail, but I think once we're able to create consciousnesses out of, like, things, or that kind of is like a meta-modernist step, because it doesn't matter what the past was for, like, what is it a pastiche of, or where does it come from? Because now it's its own being.
It is its own. It's a fully operational Death Star.
Okay, let's get out of this subject now.
Though I don't mean it negatively. It's not a negative thing.
Okay.
I don't think it's a negative thing to have a community built around intentionally finding joy and pretending to be something else. Because otherwise, then we'd have to say that acting is evil.
Yeah.
And acting isn't, and then we'd say writing fiction is evil. So I don't think it's any more. I don't think it's any more morally objectionable at its root existence than acting or writing. But then again, if you are exclusively turning yourself to portraying something that isn't you, can that be damaging and long term to your view of self?
Yes, because I think that you're ultimately deconstructing something by making you, instead of like trying to use it to get to something that's natural, unless by becoming it more that it actually literally helps you.
Do you stray more from the person you are, or do you turn more into the person you want to become?
It depends on how you use it.
It depends on how you use. Yeah.
Because you can either use it to deconstruct, to actually do something that would be harmful,
or build to make
build,
yourself and others better, which is the root of a community. So therefore, what would benefit you would ultimately benefit your community by having a community with people trying to be the best people they can possibly be. Yeah, we'll stick with that. So why don't you I'm very interested because we both like to write about anthropomorphized characters.
You more than me, but yeah, I'm starting to get into that.
Yeah, so if you could give us like a brief summary of what your next project so it's like without going into super semantic detail, just like the questions you're going to be wrestling with in this next one, because I think it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I don't really have a lot of plot stuff down, and I kind of afraid to use the notes a bit to write down some ideas. But yeah, the general idea is that it's kind of science fiction. Maybe it's more Firefly than Star Wars. It's kind of like, yeah, it's in the future, but not really specified time. A lot of times because of relativity. But one of the things is that they're uplifted animals. They're literally animals like made to be like human intelligence and some human anatomy for practicality's sake. So it's real world. It's in the future, and an unknown time in the future. At least this part that they have this, and so there's, of course, they start out with stuff like apes, primates, dolphins, and then they get into cats and dogs, which they actually call
Do dolphins have legs?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But the dogs and cats, they've actually started their own culture. They're on their own planets, and they call themselves Inus and Nekos, respectively.
Taking the classic, yeah, okay. I mean, yeah. Why not leave a cultural trope and leave a cultural artifact in there to be a touchstone?
Yes, with all the misspelled species names from Real World Analogies would be enough to make Robert Jordan blush.
Felinians of the felines. Oh my word!
Really, is that a thing somewhere?
I think it was felines. F-E-L-I-O-N-S, because they want to pay homage to their ancestors. Stop it!
But so these guys find that the people who had uploaded them, at least with this species, kind of like were preservationists when it came to their nature. So they got
preservationist. Ooh, interesting.
So like they literally have cat biology and sociality like the same as like their average house cat. I mean, I'm not really sure the exact species of my cat. It might be actually like a
cat with a capital C.
I'm thinking maybe a lynx because that would look cool. I don't know.
Lynxes are interesting. Well, because lynxes. Well, here's the thing: because you've had sociology of lynxes that just be a bunch of people hiding in their houses, and then I feel like everybody hides in their house. Valentine's Day, boom! Everybody goes back to their house.
Yeah, that actually is viable. But let's say it's house cats. So,
okay.
The mothers and girls are suspected to hunt. Um, the men are expected to go to college and practically just go and really smoke catnip and not actually get anything done and be like general like welfare recipients in their society. Really,
Is this a feminist movie, Matthew? Are you making a feminist furry movie?
no, this is just how it is. So yeah, so the girl, so there's a thing in cat biology that basically two cats fight over a female cat, and the one who wins gets to mate with them.
Okay.
So this one girl who's a cat, don't know her name yet. Yeah, sorry, I'll work on that later. So she's kind of a convert to Christianity, and
Okay.
in this there are Jewish neckos and there are Islamic neckos. All the real world religions are still there. The denominations are all different, but
the denominations are all okay. So
you're gonna have like a Christianity with a liturgy, and but also believe in like an elect, but also somebody who come with God on their own power, but also like low church understandings of this and that. I'm working on it.
Arminian neckos versus Calvinist neckos. Oh my word! This is so. So sort of to take that in a nutshell. So you have the idea of this character,
a character who's struggling with their biology, and as a species that's really newly
made,
yeah, that's intelligent, that's been uplifted, like questions about the soul, and really are bigger parts of like reality and its relation to consciousness, and who has a soul and who doesn't, which is, but
that's
she
a
kind of
huge
is
question.
part of the conversation is that like she's wondering really is since the Bible supposedly didn't see her coming as a species and as a person, like is it relevant to what she says? Like does she have what?
Is it for her too?
Yeah, and there's kind of a plot point later is that she considers joining another religion because she thinks that it can answer questions about her biology better, that it has essentially no answers. It's like, and it's hard, and one of her big conflicts as like having a character arc is like having to fight her society of like basically I won't get into too much detail, but like she kind of becomes an outcast because she decides on her puberty birthday not to run away from her house for a bit, so the two tomcats don't fight over who will mate for her because she pledged herself to wait till marriage.
Is it okay? So is it sort of a medieval? Is it not? I mean, I knew it was that section, but is it sort of a medievalist idea? That's very interesting. That's interesting because you have so many tensions there. Because you have an interreligious tension. You have the tension of both what you could say is the soul that is and the soul that is becoming are themselves a tension. I think that's a uniquely Christian literary tension, is the soul that is and the soul that is becoming. You have the tension of who you are and how that relates to what you are. Because who you are and what you are not the same thing. And then you also have the question of gender role in society. Because you're not only expected to be the breadwinner, but you're also expected to be sexually submissive. That's even a subversion of what we as humans have traditionally had as the idea of being he who controls the bread controls the
He controls the spice, controls the universe, but that's another sci-fi thing. But yeah, and to kind of like top this, I'm actually quite impressed with the character I've created in her, and I hope I meet it with other characters and the level of plans I have for her.
But that does reflect Katniss, though, not Katniss Everdeen.
Yeah, I know, cat, the quality of being cat.
Don't make her an arrow slinging Mary Sue. I know people always say I don't know. That's actually a really good question. Is we should tackle sometime is the Hunger Games. Is the Hunger Games good or bad? Because people, even at my college, that was a largely contested issue in the literature department. Is it good? Is it bad? Or is it just useful?
I personally have an opinion that it's not really, definitely not literary fiction. Not just because of J.G. Keeley said, but what J.G. Keeley doesn't talk about is the potential it missed. And I would like to talk about that, but yeah, definitely good idea for. But to go back in my character,
Right.
and just another side note, she actually joins the main cast of characters because basically since Neckos are hunters, she's basically the markswoman of the team, which really fits in well like her actual practical use, you know.
So practical use is you're tying into what you're meant to do, but what she's meant to do is also in line with her society, which is kind of against the subversion plot. So she's becoming what she's meant to be by
And
becoming
she's a
more of
teenager,
what she
so
is,
she's kind of like very
independently.
hormoned up and like kind of deciding for who she wants to be. The coming of age story with her character arc, which I
So
think
she's
is
an
like,
inherently turbulent character.
yes. She
That's
actually, I wrote the
interesting.
story that she was almost raped by her lesbian boss because basically she was friends with other people who messed their mating birthday, which is usually either sexual people or lesbians for females.
I don't follow. I really don't follow.
So basically, in a society like there aren't that society, not a lot of other Neckos try to miss their mating birthday intentionally. The only reason they do that,
Oh,
they are
okay,
attracted.
okay. That kind of makes sense, but that doesn't reflect catness. Though I don't like cat. I don't know how I feel about that plot point. I mean, I think it. I don't know if I don't know if I'm go if I don't know if I go along with that plot point because I don't see how it works because it doesn't make sense in context to the other conflict.
I'll work on it, but I think you understand what I'm trying to really say with
Well, I understand what you're
how I'm using her biology and her relation to her humanity. Really,
so would the act of her boss would be against her be
but outside
against
of
her
that, like the general
catness?
point, it's just like her with the Amongo Day, and like having relationship to biology and morality and a plan of it being their best plan for that. Really,
It's interesting. It's interesting. I don't know. I don't know about the list because I think it actually might be counterproductive to the point you're trying to make, but I don't know.
it's more of like a reason why she is where she is during the beginning of the story. But you know what I'm saying with the overall character.
Yeah, no, I get what you're going with the overall character.
Okay.
Yeah. Uh, so, I don't know. Do you want to move on to questions?
Mm. Yeah, unless you really super briefly want to talk about one of your characters, how you think you're pushing the genre, the concept of anthropomorphism.
Push it in as much as it relates to humans. The idea of religion and tension is always going to be there. The thing is, though, animals I think are of all like the sort of made up, like if you will, like standard fantasy sci-fi races.
Yeah.
There's always going to be some sort of beastkin. There's always going to be some sort of animalistic race. And the question is, how animal do you make them? How human do you make them?
And this is with your the Blood Covenant series you're talking about right now.
not just necessarily, but just in general, because I think they're a great concept, and I do try to keep them around in what I'm writing if it's not realistic fiction, because I think they're just good characters to have around. They're a very fertile ground. The question is how human, how non-human do I prefer to have? I prefer to write them more human to show sort of.
Well, in Blood Covenant, I know that they're the kind of like the inheritors of human civilization. They try to go for that. They try to suppress their animalness.
Yes, which is an active thing, which I think is ultimately I think that's kind of the wrong focus. It should be more focused on them sort of trying to overcome the animalness that is sort of inherent in them.
Yeah, I see a little bit of that.
But that would also cause humans to look down on them. Understandably so. It would be, hey, well, at least we don't eat our enemies. The last refuge of the moral low ground. Alright, so questions. You want to lead off?
Yeah, so uh, this is kind of a general one, but why do you think so much trash fantasy gets published? So that'd be like Shannara, Game of Thrones, Wheel of Time, that kind of thing.
I'm still not sure if I'd lump Wheel of Time in trash fantasy, but
They're all
I,
sure long-winded. They all have that in common. I mean,
uh,
that's how they make money, but still.
I think that in general, trash fiction gets published because trash fiction is what people want to read. A lot of people, I say the majority of people who read aren't there to look for something that's going to outright challenge them. People will look for things that they will enjoy that will intrigue them. And being intrigued is a perfectly fair reason to read a book. Entertainment is also a reason to read a book. But that's the difference between literary fiction and fiction. One is meant to entertain, one is meant to challenge.
Interesting.
So I think that's kind of the difference. My question is somewhat related to our topic today, and it is. I'll say that one for a second. Mine was, what non-living thing do you think deserves anthropomorphization, or would be an interesting thing to anthropomorphize?
Maybe like something that would be a good hive mind. I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think of something that like would be. It'd be interesting. Like, I think the only thing I can think of is like actually a Portuguese man of war. People think they're jellyfish. They're like 5 things at once or something. You could uplift that. That would be really weird. Think of like a supercomputer or something.
Ooh, that's kind of still living, but that's kind of really scary.
Yeah,
I like it.
The question is, if you try to enslave it, I mean, try to uplift it for the sake of being a supercomputer, like, would it kind of be enslaving to use it as one? Like, how intelligent would you use it, and would it be like a matter of convincing it to train itself to be that one, like training a son to be like an expert piano player? I don't know.
Would it even be able to communicate with us?
If we knew, I think if we knew how to uplift it, we'd figure out how to make it communicate with us.
Fair. We learn how to speak jellyfish.
Yeah.
Quick, we uplifted the jellyfish. Somebody get Ellen DeGeneres out here.
I got that.
Shh, like it was like the Indiana Jones map. Hi there. Just get on to the next airport. All right. Your second question for me.
So when writing a speculative fiction story, do you recommend starting with world building and writing a story within that created world, or having a great story and building a world around it?
You can do both. You can do either. I think either works. It depends on what you're trying to do. I think that either way you need to have a defined idea of what your world is when you're coming up with your conflict for your story. But here's the problem. When you're writing a story, how much of it matters? So, like, this is an idea of Matt Colville. He said, when you start an adventure in Dungeons and Dragons, there's a whole world out there, and it exists. But you know what? When you start out, for like the first year you play, all that matters is this city and like the 5 other cities around it. That's all you need to know about. And the 5 guys who go through it. That's all that honestly matters. They should know that there's other stuff out there. And there should be other stuff out there, but you don't need to have a categorical knowledge of what's out there. But you need to know who lives in this city. Why do they live there? Why do these 2 people not get along? Hey, why do these guys get along? Who's that guy, and why does he matter?
It really is an art, but it's easier than it looks. Would have saved Robert Jordan a lot of paper and time.
Yes. And my final question for you is, if you could be an anthropomorphic animal, what anthropomorphic animal would you be?
So, yeah, this is totally not a repackaging of another question.
This is a repackaging of another question, but it's brought into a literary function. And let me put it this way. If you could do this, now I want to add to this question as I wanted to, was in what world would it be? And in what kind of story would you like it to be in? So there's a little bit more nuance, because I want there to be a reason.
I always want to say like a bird would be cool. I know that's not really popular, but like
Bird's
just
cool.
like cool, because like I've kind of been afraid of not flying, but like going really fast. Like I'm not really a big roller coaster person. I'd endure one; they're cool. But it'd be kind of cool to like kind of be fearless like that and get things done really fast. Like just speaking totally fantastical,
That'd be cool. Birds are cool. Birds are neat. All right. Well, this has been a rather digressing episode of Behind the Curve. If you want to subscribe, there's no one stopping you. If you want to like, the only thing stopping you is probably me right now. Alright, so for the rest of you, have a good night, sleep tight, enjoy the rest of your November. Awoo. Alright, good night everybody.